Now, viewers, a major security alert is emerging from the Gulf region, with multiple commercial vessels now coming under attack within hours. According to the UK Maritime Trade Operations, UKMTO, at least 3 ships have been struck by unknown projectiles in separate incidents in the Gulf waters. The latest incident was reported about 35 nautical miles north of Jebel Ali in UAE, where a container ship was hit by a projectile. Now, that triggered small fire on board. There was darkness, so, that made it a little difficult to fully assess the situation. Now, the crew is safe. This is what we've learned, and there are no reports of any environmental damage. Few hours before this, 2 oil tankers were also targeted near Al Basra in Iraq. The crude oil tanker, Sea Safe Vishnu, in fact, a Marshall Islands flagged vessel was also hit by a projectile. Now, that also led to fire on board. Then another tanker, Zephyros, which sails under the Malta flag, was also struck in the same area. Now, let's tell you a little bit about how Brent prices have been over the last few days. So on Monday, like I said, they touched around $120 a barrel before settling at $114 a barrel. The last 2 days, things remain better. It was under control. $89 per barrel on 10th of March, 11th of March, $86 a barrel. But now, again, on March 12th, it has crossed $100 per barrel. So this is where the concern is right now. US President Donald Trump has said that the International Energy Agency has agreed to coordinate the release of 400 million barrels of oil from national petroleum reserves worldwide in a bid to reduce prices amid conflict involving Iran. Now, why is it being done? There are strategic reserves of 32 members of the International Energy Agency. They have decided, in fact, to release 400 million barrels of crude to rein in the prices so that there's more supply of oil. 182 million barrels were released in 2022. Now, despite this big decision of IEA, what we are witnessing is that the oil prices have not come down. In fact, they have gone up further. Now, US is also a member of IEA, and US is going to be releasing 172 million barrels from the strategic reserves. Now, even this could not bring some kind of calmness to the energy markets. Let's also tell you a little bit about, why the amount of oil that will be released this time to deal with the current situation is much higher. Now, in 2026, because of Russia, because of US, Israel and Iran war, 400 million barrels are going to be released. Now, this is more than double of the release that we saw during Russia-Ukraine war in 2022. Now, that was 182 million barrels. To bring the oil prices down, this is how IEA steps in. Even though the number is much higher this time, there has hardly been any impact on the sentiment of the energy market or the crude oil prices. Let's also bring you another, in fact, element here that we have at this point in time. This is important because this measure has also failed to, in fact, rein in the crude oil prices. Now, also, viewers, we have to tell you about how Iran has threatened that oil could actually cross $200 per barrel mark as well. Let's go across to my colleague Srinjoy Chaudhary joining us live right now for more on this. Srinjoy, yesterday evening when this decision came from the International Energy Agency that 400 million barrels are going to be released from the strategic oil reserves by the member countries, we thought that perhaps, there's going to be some kind of a breather in the oil markets that are on fire, but that hasn't really happened. What is your assessment? Why did it not manage to cool down the prices?
First of all, it's insecurity. Already, you know better than anybody else that 20% of the world's petroleum, crude oil, goes through the straits. And you see already that in the last week, an average of 4 ships have crossed the Straits of Hormuz. Now, if that is so, there is a clear realization that the war is going to continue. Now, yes, 400 million barrels is a serious number. but they are not on the ground as yet. So it's a question of when they will be available. Yes, the fact that a promise has been made is understandable and therefore appreciated, but it's not on the ground as yet. So it's a question of getting those barrels out, putting them into the market. That itself will take a while. And in that while, you see more and more tankers being hit. So the one reason why petroleum prices went down was when President Trump said that the war is coming to an end. Then petroleum prices went down from $120 a barrel to about 90. And then again, when he said that, look, we have to finish the job. The war is won, but we have to finish the job. Then it meant that the war would actually go on for a while, which is why petroleum prices have rebounded and they are over 100. Now the question is, how long will the war last? And then 400 million barrels is fine, but that too will come to an end. And if the war continues, so these are issues that the market is very jittery. It's very clear that the market is jittery. And when the market is this jittery, then naturally prices will go up.
But, you know, a couple of points here, Srinjoy. While, of course, international agencies are trying to control the situation, trying to stabilize the oil market, we also had, threats coming in from Iran specifically. According to, the reports that we have got, Iran has threatened that we should be ready for oil crossing $200 per barrel. And this, happening at a time when the war is intensifying, the kind of statements we are getting from U.S. President Donald Trump, and reports suggest that Iranian forces will be targeting American vessels going forward.
Yes, that's entirely possible, is what Iran, when I say that, I refer to Iran targeting American vessels. That's entirely possible. Also, Iran is in a sense lucky that this is probably the last decade of a petroleum-intensive economy. Because by the 2035 or so, you're going to go into a green economy. Then all targeting the tankers of the world will be of no use. They can be used for target practice. So that is one. But importantly, the war is in such a situation that no one knows how long it's going to last.
Absolutely.
The president himself does not seem to be saying clearly how long that will last. So
every day a new statement, in fact, is coming from U.S. President Donald Trump. Stay on with us, Srinjoy. We also have with us on the broadcast Pathikrit Payne, who is a strategic affairs expert. Good morning. Thank you for speaking with us here on Times Now. What is your assessment? I mean, on one hand, American administration keeps saying that, we will see oil and gas prices decrease rapidly. IEA decided to even release 400 million barrels of crude, of oil from the strategic reserves. Despite all of this, you've got Brent crossing $100 per barrel again. What's happening?
A small correction. This is pine, not pain. Number two, see, let's put it this way. 100 million barrel doesn't matter much when it comes to global supply. There was an estimation they had as to what will be the timeline for the war to end. I think that estimation has been breached. Iran is no match for United States when it comes to weapon for weapon. They have absolutely no, capacity in terms of countering the Americans on air power. But what the Iranians have developed over the last few decades is they have mastered the asymmetric warfare. They have a huge arsenal of swarm drones, both subsurface and surface and aerial. And that is what they're doing. You don't need to counter the American aircraft carriers. You just need to, unfortunately, what the Iranians are doing is that they are actually shooting off, combat drones or loitering munitions or subsurface munitions towards these tankers every few days. And that is good enough, or say every few hours. And that is good enough to create ripples across the oil supply chain, because of which, as a result of panic, the price is going up. So the problem is this. First, you impose sanctions on the
Right.
Russians, restrict their supply. Then you have a war in Venezuela. You are taking that oil, but it is a heavy crude, can't be refined so easily. And
Right.
then you are creating a problem in Strait of Hormuz. Now, there will be supply shocks for the time being, unless the Americans do realize that they have to change the
Right.
course of correct. There has to be change in course. What is the American end objective in Iran? Regime change, preventing them from having nuclear weapons, or
Right.
controlling the oil? Unless that is clear, this war is not going to end so soon.
Okay. Mr. Pathikrit Pine, appreciate you speaking with us here on Times Now and sharing with us your perspective. We have former Ambassador Achal Balhotra also joining us on the broadcast. Good morning, sir. Thank you for speaking with us here on Times Now. Where do you see Brent going, given what's happening around the Strait of Hormuz right now?
Well, good morning. Obviously, I'm not an energy expert, but looking at the situation, the current scenario, obviously the supply chains, the trade flows, the oil flows are going to be impacted unless the situation is brought into control. And if this situation continues, obviously the oil prices are going to increase day by day. I mean, it's a question of how soon this conflict comes to an end, or how soon the people, can rely upon the reserves that they have built. In India, we have been getting assurances that as far as oil is concerned, we are comfortable. Problem is with the gas. But it's a very simple, it may sound a very simple assessment, but in my opinion,
Right.
if the situation doesn't come under control
Right.
within the next few days, supply chains will continue to get affected, and
All right.
that will have a ripple impact on the oil prices
All right.
and the energy crisis throughout the world.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you speaking with us here on Times Now and sharing with us your perspective.